If your life was a movie, what genre would it be? The fortune teller had asked Nora Parker last night at her friend Zoe's birthday party. A tragedy, Nora had replied without hesitation, making everyone laugh. 24 hours later, as she crawled across the polished marble floor of the Montgomery penthouse, frantically chasing an escaped tarantula, the beloved pet of her billionaire employer's eccentric niece, Nora mentally corrected her answer. Definitely a farce. "Come on, Mr. Fuzzy," she whispered, spotting the hairy arachnid disappearing under an antique sideboard worth more than her student loan debt. "Your 8-year-old owner will be heartbroken if I lose you, and then your very scary uncle will fire me. 3 weeks on the job is not a good look on a resume." At 28, Nora hadn't planned on babysitting spiders, or cleaning penthouses for that matter. With an art history degree and a talent for restoration that her professors had called exceptional, she should have been working at the Metropolitan Museum by now. Instead, her mother's sudden diagnosis had derailed everything, leaving Nora desperately taking the highest-paying position she could find, executive housekeeper for Michael Montgomery, tech visionary and notorious perfectionist. Nora flattened, herself on the floor, peering into the darkness beneath the furniture. Having grown up in rural Vermont, she wasn't afraid of spiders, not even ones large enough to require a pet license in some states. What terrified her was disappointing little Emma Montgomery, who had tearfully entrusted Mr. Fuzzy to her care while visiting her uncle for the day. "Got you!" Nora exclaimed, lunging forward with a glass container. Success. The tarantula scurried inside, and she quickly secured the ventilated lid. "You're more trouble than you're worth, buddy," she told the creature, who seemed unimpressed by her heroics. "I've heard the same thing about myself." The deep voice from behind made Nora yelp and spin around, still flat on the floor. There, framed by the afternoon light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, stood Michael Montgomery, wearing nothing but a white towel around his waist and a puzzled expression on his face. Nora clutched the container to her chest as she scrambled to her feet, painfully aware of her disheveled appearance. After chasing the tarantula for 20 minutes, her dark curls had escaped their practical bun, and the knees of her uniform, pants were dusty from the floor. "Mr. Montgomery, I thought you were in Singapore until Thursday." She tried to discreetly tuck a strand of hair behind her ear while maintaining her grip on the spider container. Michael raised an eyebrow, water still glistening on his shoulders. Conference call ran shorter than expected. I decided to come home early. His eyes moved to the container in her hands. "Is that a spider?" "Your niece Emma's pet tarantula, Mr. Fuzzy." Nora held up the container as evidence. "She's with Mrs. Winters at her piano lesson downstairs. Emma was worried you wouldn't remember to feed him, so I offered to spider sit." Michael's expression softened at the mention of his niece. "Emma's here?" Claire didn't tell me she was dropping her off. "Emergency board meeting, apparently. Your sister said you wouldn't mind." Nora shifted her weight, trying desperately to look professional while acutely aware of her employer's state of undress. He was even more impressive up close. All lean, muscle and sharp angles, with dark hair still dripping from his shower. "I see." Michael ran a hand through his wet hair, and Nora noticed a small scar along his collarbone. "And you volunteered to watch her pet spider?" "Well, technically I'm paid to dust your shelves, not wrangle exotic pets, but..." Nora felt her natural humor break through her nervousness. "I figured other duties as assigned covers arachnid. Management." Instead of the stern response she expected, Michael laughed. A rich, genuine sound that seemed to surprise even him. "Most people who work for me would have quit on the spot if asked to handle that thing. Most people haven't spent summers helping their entomologist uncle with his collection," Nora replied, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Besides, Mr. Fuzzy here is harmless. His fangs are too small to pierce human skin." Michael stepped closer, studying the tarantula with a mixture of interest and caution. "Good to know." I'm not exactly comfortable with spiders. The great Michael Montgomery, afraid of something? Nora couldn't help teasing, immediately regretting her casualness. I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. No, it's... He met her eyes, and something shifted in his expression. Refreshing, actually. They stood for a moment in silence, the air between them charged with something Nora couldn't quite name. He was close enough now that she caught the scent of his expensive shower gel, something with sandalwood and citrus. The moment was shattered by the pitter-patter of small feet racing down the hallway. Aunt Nora, did you find Mr. Fuzzy? 8-year-old Emma Montgomery burst into the room, her dark pigtails bouncing and her eyes wide with concern. She stopped, abruptly, when she saw her uncle. Uncle Mike, you're home! She launched herself at him, seemingly unbothered by his towel-only attire. Michael caught her with ease, lifting her into a hug. Hey, Squirt, what's this about turning my apartment into a zoo? Nora blinked at being called Aunt Nora, a title Emma had bestowed upon her during their first meeting, declaring that anyone who could name all the Pokémon in her collection deserved honorary family status. Mom said it was okay, Emma explained, her voice taking on the diplomatic tone children use when navigating adult rules. And Aunt Nora said she'd help. She's not scared of anything. Michael's eyes met Nora's over his niece's head. I'm beginning to see that. Emma wriggled down and rushed to Nora, examining the container. You caught him. You're the best. Mission accomplished, Nora agreed, handing over the container with ceremony. Now, why don't you take Mr. Fuzzy back to his terrarium while your uncle gets... She gestured vaguely in Michael's direction. Less... ventilated. Michael coughed, suppressing a smile while Emma looked confused. She means I need to put some clothes on, Michael clarified, ruffling his niece's hair. Oh. Emma nodded seriously. Grown-ups are weird about nakedness. Indeed we are, Nora mumbled, mortified but fighting laughter. As Emma skipped away with her rescued pet, Michael lingered. Thank you for handling that situation, and for being good with Emma. She doesn't warm up to people easily. She's a great kid, Nora said sincerely. Smart, funny, and has excellent taste in both Pokémon and arachnids. Michael studied her for a moment, as if seeing her properly for the first time. You're not what I expected, Nora Parker. I get that a lot, she replied with a small smile. Usually right before I'm fired. Well, spider wrangling skills aside, your job is safe. He turned to leave, then paused. My sister and I are taking Emma out for pizza tonight, her favorite place. You should join us. Nora blinked, caught completely off guard. What? Consider it a thank you, for going above and beyond with Emma. His tone was casual, but something in his eyes suggested the invitation was more significant than he was letting on. I don't think that's just pizza, he said, with an 8-year-old chaperone, nothing scandalous. Against her better judgment, Nora found herself nodding. Okay, pizza. Good. Michael smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that transformed his entire face and made Nora's stomach do an inconvenient flip. We leave at 6. As he walked away, still wearing nothing but a towel and confidence, Nora mentally updated her answer to the fortune teller yet again. Her life wasn't a tragedy or even a farce. It was turning into a romantic comedy, the kind where the down-to-earth heroine finds herself hopelessly entangled with someone completely out of her league. And everybody knew how those stories ended. Nora Parker had faced many intimidating situations in her life, defending her thesis to a panel of stone-faced professors, negotiating with insurance companies over her mother's medical bills. Even that time she accidentally locked herself in the walk-in freezer at her college job. But nothing quite compared to the anxiety of trying to decide what to wear to a casual pizza dinner with her billionaire employer, his sister, and his niece. This is ridiculous, she muttered to herself, tossing another outfit onto her bed in the modest studio apartment she could barely afford, despite Michael Montgomery's generous salary. It's just pizza, with an 8-year-old present. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Zoe. Did you quit yet? Or are you still spider wrangling for America's most eligible bachelor? Nora rolled her eyes and typed back. Not only am I still employed, I've been invited to dinner with his family. Help. 3 dots appeared immediately, followed by, what? I'm calling you right now. The phone rang seconds later, and Nora put it on speaker as she held up a simple blue dress. You buried the leady. Zoe's voice filled the room. When you texted earlier about chasing a tarantula, you conveniently left. Out the part where billionaire boss man asked you out. It's not a date, Nora clarified, discarding the blue dress. His niece will be there, and his sister. It's a thank you for not letting the spider escape and terrorize his penthouse. Uh-huh, Zoe replied skeptically. And he's expressing his gratitude by introducing you to his family? That's not employee appreciation, honey. That's vetting. Don't be ridiculous. Nora finally settled on dark jeans, a soft emerald sweater that brought out the green in her hazel eyes, and ankle boots. Casual, but put together. He probably just feels bad that his sister dumped her kid and her kid's nightmare pet on me without warning. Keep telling yourself that. Nora could practically hear Zoe smirk through the phone. Just promise me you'll text if he whisks you away on his private jet. I promise if any whisking occurs, you'll be the first to know, Nora laughed, checking her watch. I have to go. They're picking me up in 15 minutes. Wait, he's picking you up? At your apartment? Oh, honey, this is definitely... Nora hung up, unable to handle any more of Zoe's romantic theories. This wasn't a date. It couldn't be. Michael Montgomery dated supermodels and tech heiresses, not art history graduates who chase spiders for a living. Besides, she'd worked for him for less than a month. The power imbalance alone made the whole idea inappropriate. So why had she spent 45 minutes on her makeup? When the sleek black SUV pulled up outside her building at exactly 6 p.m., Nora was surprised to see Michael himself in the driver's seat rather than his usual chauffeur. Even more surprising was the sight of him in casual clothes, dark jeans, and a charcoal Henley that somehow made him look even more attractive than his usual bespoke suits. The back door flew open before she could reach for the handle, and Emma's face appeared. Aunt Nora, Uncle Mike let me ride shotgun on the way here, but he says I have to sit in the back with you now because of safety regulations. She rolled, her eyes dramatically at this injustice. Rules are rules, Squirt, Michael called from the front seat, his eyes meeting Nora's in the rearview mirror. Hi? Hi, Nora replied, sliding into the back seat beside Emma. Thanks for the ride? This is my mom, Emma announced, pointing to the elegant woman in the passenger seat. She's super smart but terrible at Minecraft. The woman turned around with a warm smile that resembled her brother's. Claire Montgomery. Pleasure to meet the famous spider-wrangling art expert. You've made quite an impression on both my daughter and my brother. Nora felt her cheeks warm. All in a day's work. Aunt Nora knows everything about Pokémon. And spiders and art, Emma informed her mother seriously. And she doesn't even scream when she sees bugs like you do. Different skill sets, sweetheart, Claire replied diplomatically, shooting an amused glance at her brother. As they drove, Nora realized they were heading away from the upscale neighborhoods she'd expected. I thought we were going to Emma's. Favorite pizza place? We are, Michael confirmed, navigating through increasingly modest streets. Gino's on 7th, best pizza in the city, according to our resident food critic. Their crust is perfectly chewy, Emma explained with the seriousness of a culinary expert. And they put the perfect amount of cheese. Not too much, not too little. 20 minutes later, they pulled up in front of a small, family-owned pizzeria with a red and white striped awning and a line out the door. It was about as far from where Nora would expect to find a billionaire as possible. I've lived in this city for 6 years and never knew about this place, Nora admitted as they joined the queue. Mike discovered it back when he was just a broke college kid coding in his dorm room, Claire explained. Before the billions and the penthouse. Michael shrugged, looking almost embarrassed. Some things you don't outgrow. Inside, Nora was stunned to see the staff greet Michael like an old friend, rather than a famous tech mogul. The owner, a jovial Italian man in his 60s, emerged from the kitchen to personally welcome them, lifting Emma into a bear hug. "My favorite customer," he boomed. "And you bring a new friend today, eh?" He winked at Nora. "This is Nora," Michael said, his hand briefly touching the small of her back, in a gesture that sent warmth spreading through her. "She works with me." "Ah, works with." The owner raised his bushy eyebrows suggestively. "Very nice. Very pretty." "She saved Mr. Fuzzy's life," Emma interjected importantly. "The spider," Claire clarified when the owner looked confused. "Brave and beautiful. Come, I have your usual table." As they settled into a worn red vinyl booth in the corner, Nora realized that this wasn't at all what she'd expected. The Montgomery family, worth billions and regularly featured in business and society pages, were acting like normal people. Michael teased his sister about her failed attempt at making homemade pasta the previous week. Claire showed Nora embarrassing photos of teenage Michael with braces and a regrettable haircut. Emma chattered about her school science project on arachnids, inspired by her beloved pet. "So, Nora," Claire said as they waited for their pizzas, "my brother tells me you have a background in art history and restoration?" "Yes, I specialized in 19th century European paintings," Nora replied, surprised Michael had mentioned it. "I was working at the Hansen Gallery downtown before life took a different turn." Michael watched her intently, and Nora felt suddenly self-conscious. "My mother got sick," she explained. "The medical bills piled up and the salary at the gallery wasn't enough. So here I am, professional spider wrangler." "Nora's mom has the same thing my teacher Mrs. Wilson had," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Multiple sclerosis. Is your mom in a wheelchair too?" "Emma," Claire chided gently, "that might be a personal question." "It's okay," Nora assured her. "Yes, my mom uses a wheelchair sometimes on her bad days, but she's doing better with her new medication." Michael was oddly quiet, his expression thoughtful. The arrival of their pizzas, one pepperoni for Emma, one margarita for the adults, provided a welcome distraction. As the meal progressed, Nora found herself relaxing, laughing at Claire's stories about their childhood and Michael's early business ventures. For his part, Michael slowly revealed a side of himself completely absent from his public persona, dry-humored, occasionally self-deprecating, and deeply devoted to his niece. "Uncle Mike lets me come to his office and play with the VR prototypes," Emma confided to Nora as they shared a dessert of tiramisu. "He says I'm his best beta tester." "You break them in very creative ways," Michael explained with a fond smile. "That's valuable user research." After dinner, as they walked back to the car, Emma slipped her small hand into Nora's. "Can you come over tomorrow and help me with my science project about Mr. Fuzzy? Mom says I need adult supervision for the research part." Claire laughed. Translation: "I refuse to look at close-up pictures of spider anatomy." "I'd love to," Nora replied, touched by the child's attachment to her. "If it's okay with your uncle, of course." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Tomorrow's your day off." "I don't mind," Nora said honestly. "Spiders are fascinating creatures." "You're weird," Emma declared happily. "I like that about you." The ride back to Nora's apartment was filled with comfortable conversation, Emma eventually dozing off against Nora's shoulder. When they arrived, Michael insisted on walking her to her door while Claire stayed in the car with the sleeping child. Standing outside her apartment building, a far cry from his luxury penthouse, Nora suddenly felt the awkwardness of their situation return. "Thank you for inviting me," she said, fishing for her keys. It was unexpected. In a good way, I hope? There was a hint of uncertainty in his voice that surprised her. Definitely good, she confirmed. You have a wonderful family. Michael glanced back at the car, then at Nora. About tomorrow, Emma's project. You really don't have to do that on your day off. I want to, Nora insisted. Besides, how many people get to list tarantula research assistant on their resume? He laughed, the sound warm in the cool evening air. You're not what I expected, Nora Parker. You said that already, she pointed out. This morning, when I was flat on your floor chasing an arachnid. It bears repeating. His eyes held hers, and for a heart-stopping moment, Nora thought he might lean in. Instead, he took a small step back. I'll have a car pick you up tomorrow. 10 o'clock? I can take the subway, she protested. Humor me. His tone was light, but something in his expression suggested the matter wasn't up for debate. Fine, Nora conceded. But I draw the line at being chauffeured to the grocery store. A girl has to maintain some independence. Noted. Michael's smile was soft as he backed away toward the car. Good night, Nora. As she watched the expensive SUV disappear into the night, Nora leaned against her door, processing the surreal evening. She should be panicking about the increasingly blurry professional boundaries, worrying about office politics and power dynamics. Instead, all she could think about was the way Michael Montgomery, billionaire tech genius and her employer, had looked at her across a table in a hole-in-the-wall pizzeria like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite figure out, but very much wanted to solve. Her phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. So, private jet or no? Nora typed back, no jet. Just pizza, family, and complications I definitely don't need. As she unlocked her apartment door, another text came through. Too late. You're already in too. Deep. I can feel it. Looking down at Emma's small handprint still visible on her sweater sleeve, Nora couldn't find it in herself to disagree. Spider silk is 5 times stronger than steel of the same diameter, Nora explained, watching Emma carefully glue a magnified image of Mr. Fuzzy's spinnerets onto her science project poster. Some scientists are trying to replicate it to make everything from bulletproof vests to medical sutures. That's so cool! Emma's eyes widened with genuine wonder. You think Mr. Fuzzy could stop a bullet? Let's not test that theory, Michael interjected, entering the penthouse's sunlit kitchen with 3 mugs of hot chocolate balanced on a tray. I've already had enough heart attacks this week. Nora accepted her mug with a grateful smile, trying not to notice how domestic the scene felt. The 3 of them working on a school project on a Saturday morning, Michael making hot chocolate with homemade whipped cream and cinnamon. It was disarmingly normal for a man who regularly appeared on the cover of business magazines. Your uncle's right, Nora told Emma. Mr. Fuzzy is much more valuable as a research subject than a ballistics dummy. They had been working on the project for 2 hours, and Nora was impressed by both Emma's scientific curiosity and Michael's patience. He had cleared his schedule entirely, canceling what Emma casually mentioned were boring meetings with important people to help with the project. Did you know, Michael said, settling into a chair beside Emma, that some spiders can fly? They release strands of silk that catch the wind and carry them for miles. It's called ballooning. Nora looked at him in surprise. Someone's been doing their homework. A faint flush colored his cheeks. I may have done some reading last night. If my niece is going to be a spider expert, I should at least know the basics. Uncle Mike stays up all night reading about things, Emma informed Nora solemnly. Mom says it's because his brain never turns off. That sounds exhausting, Nora commented, meeting Michael's eyes over Emma's head. It can be, he admitted, quietly. The moment stretched between them, something unspoken passing in the exchange, until Emma accidentally knocked over a bottle of glitter, sending sparkling flecks across the marble countertop. Oops! The little girl scrambled to contain the glittery disaster. "I've got it," Nora laughed, reaching for paper towels. As she and Michael both bent to clean up the mess, their hands brushed, sending a jolt of awareness through her that had nothing to do with static electricity. "Sorry," they said in unison, then smiled at the coincidence. "You guys are weird," Emma declared, observing their interaction with the unfiltered honesty of an 8-year-old. "You look at each other like people in those movies Mom watches when she thinks I'm asleep." Nora felt her face heat. "I think that's enough spider facts for one morning. Why don't we take a break and finish the poster after lunch? Can we order from that place with the good dumplings?" Emma asked Michael, mercifully distracted. "Please?" "Already ahead of you," Michael replied, holding up his phone. "I ordered while you two were discussing spider fangs." "See?" Emma told Nora triumphantly. "His brain never turns off." After lunch, while Emma worked on coloring her project title in elaborate bubble letters, Michael gestured for Nora to join him on the balcony. The October air was crisp. The city sprawled, below them in a tapestry of autumn colors and urban architecture. "I wanted to thank you," Michael said, leaning against the glass railing. "Emma doesn't connect with many adults. Her school psychologist says it's because of the divorce." "She's a special kid," Nora replied honestly. "Smart, curious, way more perceptive than most adults give children credit for." Michael nodded, his gaze distant. "Claire's ex-husband moved to London last year. He calls on birthdays and holidays, but..." He trailed off, a flash of protective anger crossing his features. "Emma deserves better." "She has you," Nora pointed out. "And her mom. That's a lot. Sometimes I worry it's not enough." He turned to face her, his expression suddenly vulnerable in a way that made Nora's heart ache. "I'm not exactly a model of healthy relationships myself." Nora wasn't sure how to respond. According to the tabloids and gossip she'd studiously avoided reading since taking the job, Michael Montgomery's dating history featured a parade of beautiful, accomplished women, none lasting more than a few months. "Emma doesn't need you to be perfect," she said finally. "She just needs you to be present, which you clearly are." Something in his expression shifted, a tension releasing. Thank you for saying that." The wind picked up, sending a strand of Nora's hair across her face. Before she could brush it away, Michael's hand was there, gently tucking it behind her ear. His fingers lingered for the briefest moment, a whisper of contact that nonetheless sent her pulse racing. "I should probably confess something," he said, his voice lower. "Inviting you to dinner last night wasn't entirely about thanking you for spider wrangling." Nora swallowed, suddenly very aware of how close they were standing. "No?" "No." His eyes held hers, serious and intent. "I've wanted to get to know you since your interview. The way you talked about art, your eyes lit up. It was..." He paused, searching for the right word. "Captivating." "You barely looked up from your phone during my interview," Nora countered, confused. A small smile played at his lips. "I was recording your answers. I've listened to that interview 3 times. Nora wasn't sure if she should be flattered or concerned. "Why?" "Because you were different. Everyone who comes through that door wants something from me. Money, connections, status." He shook his head slightly. "You just wanted to talk about Monet's water lilies, and how light changes the perception of color." Nora remembered that moment. She'd gone off on a tangent about impressionist techniques, forgetting entirely that she was supposed to be interviewing for a housekeeping position, not an art history lecture. "I was nervous," she admitted. "I talk about art when I'm nervous, and I find it fascinating." Michael took a careful step closer. "Which is why I wanted to ask if you'd..." "Uncle Mike," Emma's voice broke the moment as she burst onto the balcony. "Mr. Fuzzy is molting. He's shedding his skeleton. You have to come see. It's disgusting." Her tone made it clear this was the highest possible compliment. Michael closed his eyes. Briefly, an expression of fond exasperation crossing his features. "We'll be right there, Squirt." As Emma disappeared back inside, Nora couldn't help laughing. Saved by the spider. "Temporarily," Michael replied, his eyes conveying that their conversation wasn't over. "Rain check?" "Rain check," Nora agreed, trying to ignore the butterflies in her stomach as they went inside to witness the apparently glorious spectacle of arachnid molting. Later that afternoon, as they were putting the finishing touches on the project, Michael's phone rang. His expression darkened as he checked the screen. "I need to take this," he said apologetically. "It's Tokyo." Nora nodded understandingly as he stepped out of the room. She helped Emma add the final labels to her poster, impressed by how professional it looked. "Your classmates are going to be amazed by this, Emma." "Do you think I'll get an A?" the little girl asked anxiously. "Definitely an A+, Nora assured her, just as the sound of raised voices drifted from the hallway. "It has to be fixed by Monday morning, their time," Michael was saying, his voice tight with controlled tension. "The launch can't be delayed again." Emma's shoulders slumped slightly. "He has to go work now," she whispered to Nora. "That's his work voice." Nora's heart clenched at the resignation in the child's tone. "Let's finish up here," she said gently. "Show him what we've accomplished when he's done." When Michael returned, 10 minutes later, his professional mask was firmly back in place, the relaxed man of the morning replaced by the focused CEO. "I'm sorry," he said, running a hand through his hair. "There's an issue with the Singapore software integration. I need to go into the office." "It's okay," Emma said with practiced brightness. "We finished the project. Nora says it's A+ material." "That's fantastic, Squirt." Michael examined the poster, his smile genuine despite the tension around his eyes. "Definitely award-winning work." He turned to Nora. "I called a car for you. I'm really sorry to cut this short." "No problem at all," Nora assured him, gathering her things. "I understand." "Can Aunt Nora come to my presentation on Friday?" Emma asked suddenly. "It's Parents and Special Friends Day at school. Mom's coming, but you'll be in San Francisco." Michael glanced at Nora, clearly caught off guard. "That's up to Nora, honey. It's during work hours and I'm sure she has plans." "I'd love to come," Nora found herself saying, "if it's really okay with everyone." Emma's face lit up. "Yes! Now I'll have the best project and the coolest special friend. Tyler Matheson thinks he's so great because his dad is a firefighter, but wait until he meets my spider expert." Michael walked Nora to the elevator, leaving Emma happily designing a special name tag for Nora to wear at the presentation. "You didn't have to agree to that," he said quietly as they waited for the elevator. "Emma gets carried away sometimes." "I want to go," Nora assured him. "I'm invested in this spider project now." Michael studied her face. "You're quite something, Nora Parker." The elevator arrived with a soft chime, and Nora stepped inside. "Rain check still in effect?" she asked impulsively. His smile returned, warming his eyes. "Absolutely. I don't give up that easily." As the doors closed between them, Nora leaned against the elevator wall, her mind spinning. What was she doing? Getting involved with her boss, a billionaire tech, mogul with a complicated life and a public profile, was the definition of a bad idea. Even if that boss looked at her like she was something precious and rare, even if his smile made her stomach flip, even if his obvious love for his niece made her heart melt. When the elevator reached the lobby, her phone buzzed with a text. She expected Zoe, demanding updates, but instead saw Michael's name on the screen. Would next Saturday work for that rain check? No spiders, no emergencies, no interruptions, just dinner. Not as your boss. Nora stared at the message, her finger hovering over the keyboard. The sensible answer was clear. Apologize, establish boundaries, keep things professional. Instead, she typed, "Saturday works. No boss-employee dynamics. Just dinner." His reply came immediately. "Perfect. I already have ideas." Outside, the sleek black car waited as promised. As Nora settled into the back seat, she realized she was smiling. Her life had taken the most unexpected turn, and for the first time in years, she wasn't planning 3 steps ahead, wasn't calculating risks and contingencies. She was simply looking forward to Saturday. And if the logical part of her brain was frantically waving red flags about all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong, well, she'd deal with that later. "And this is my special friend Nora," Emma announced proudly to her 3rd grade class, standing beside her spider project with Mr. Fuzzy's terrarium safely placed on a nearby table. "She's an art historian and a spider expert, and she helped me understand how tarantulas use their silk." Nora smiled and waved at the classroom full of 8-year-olds and their parents, feeling oddly nervous. She'd given presentations to museum, boards, and lectured college students, but something about 25 children staring at her with unfiltered curiosity was uniquely intimidating. "Ms. Parker knows everything about spiders," Emma continued, shooting a triumphant look at a blonde boy who must be the firefighter's son. "She's going to help me answer your questions about Mr. Fuzzy." For the next 15 minutes, Nora fielded increasingly bizarre questions about tarantulas. Do they have spider toilets? Can they learn to talk? If a radioactive spider bit Mr. Fuzzy, would he become a super-duper spider? While Claire watched from the back of the room, clearly amused by Nora's predicament. When the presentation ended, Emma's teacher, a young woman with purple-streaked hair and a genuine enthusiasm for child-led learning, awarded Emma's project the most fascinating research ribbon, sending the little girl into ecstatic bounces. "Thank you so much for coming," Claire said, as they helped Emma pack up her materials. "She's been talking about nothing else all week. Aunt Nora is coming to school. Aunt Nora knows everything. And I had no idea I was going to be co-presenting," Nora admitted with a laugh. "But it was fun. These kids ask tougher questions than my thesis committee did." "The life of an 8-year-old celebrity spider is apparently complex," Claire agreed, carefully placing Mr. Fuzzy's terrarium in a special carrying case. "Listen, do you have plans for lunch? I'd love to treat you as a thank you." Nora hesitated, unsure of the protocol for socializing with her employer's sister. "I should probably get back to work. It's Friday, and Michael texted me this morning that you have the rest of the day off," Claire said with a knowing smile. "He mentioned something about you needing time to prepare for tomorrow night." Heat rushed to Nora's cheeks. "He told you about our dinner?" Claire's smile widened. "My brother may be a tech genius, but subtlety isn't his strong suit. I haven't seen him this nervous about a date since high school prom." "He's nervous?" Nora couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. "Terrified," Claire confirmed, looking entirely too pleased about it. "Now, about that lunch? I know a fantastic little French bistro nearby, and Emma's going home with her friend Lily for a play date." Feeling like she was stepping deeper into uncharted territory, Nora nodded. "I'd like that." An hour later, seated across from Claire, at a corner table in a charming bistro, Nora found herself enjoying the unexpected girl talk. Claire Montgomery was refreshingly straightforward, with a sharp wit and none of the pretension Nora might have expected from someone born into wealth. "So," Claire said, after they'd ordered and exchanged pleasantries, "let me be blunt. You're different from Michael's usual type." Nora nearly choked on her water. "I wasn't aware we were at the discussing types stage." "Oh, we absolutely are," Claire replied, unrepentant. "My brother has been practically floating since that spider incident, and you've been drafted into family science projects. We're firmly in the types discussion zone." "That's slightly terrifying," Nora admitted. "It should be," Claire agreed, but her expression softened. "Look, Michael doesn't do this. Bringing someone into his real life, introducing them to Emma, talking about them constantly. He talks about me, constantly. Like a teenager with his first crush. Nora knows so much about impressionist paintings. Nora handled the spider situation with remarkable composure. Did you know Nora speaks fluent Italian? Claire's impression of her brother was eerily accurate. It's both adorable and slightly nauseating. Nora fiddled with her napkin, unsure how to respond. This is all happening very fast. I've only known him for a month. Montgomery family trait, Claire said with a shrug. When we know, we know. Our parents met on a Tuesday and were engaged by Friday. 36 years later, they're still disgustingly in love. That's... Nora searched for the right word. Romantic, but statistically improbable. Claire laughed. A pragmatist. Michael needs that. Her expression grew more serious. The women he usually dates are interested in Michael Montgomery, CEO, not Michael, my sci-fi nerd brother who still has his original Star Wars action figures in a climate-controlled display case. He has what? Nora couldn't help grinning at this new piece of information. Mint condition, original packaging, Claire confirmed with a conspiratorial smile. He'll deny it if you mention it. Their food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. After a few bites of her croque madame, Nora worked up the courage to ask the question that had been nagging her. Doesn't it bother you that I work for him? The power dynamics are complicated. Claire considered this, taking a sip of her wine. In any other situation, yes, but you're not his executive assistant or someone whose career he controls. You're a trained art historian temporarily working as his housekeeper. Different scenario. She had a point, Nora had to admit. Her position in Michael's home was temporary, a stopgap until her mother's medical situation stabilized. She didn't aspire to climb any corporate ladder at Montgomery Industries. Besides, Claire continued, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Like you're the most interesting puzzle he's ever encountered. Nora thought back to their moment on the balcony, the intensity in his eyes when he'd talked about her interview. He said something similar. Of course he did, Claire said, looking satisfied. Now, tell me what you're wearing tomorrow night. If I know my brother, he's planning something dramatic. By the time Nora returned to her apartment that afternoon, her head was spinning with Claire's revelations and fashion advice. The older woman had insisted on taking her shopping, dismissing Nora's protests about budgets with a wave of her hand. Consider it my investment in my brother's happiness, Claire had declared, steering Nora into a boutique she'd never have dared enter on her own. Besides, I get an employee discount. I'm on the board. Now, hanging the garment bag containing her new dress in her tiny closet, Nora tried to process the surreal turn her life had taken. A month ago, she'd been drowning in medical bills and job rejections. Now she was going on a date with Michael Montgomery, with his sister's enthusiastic blessing. Her phone rang, Zoe's ringtone. I've been summoned for predate preparation, her friend announced without preamble. I'll be there in 30 with face masks, wine, and emotional support. Do not shower without me. How did you even know? Nora asked, bewildered. Please. The entire female population of your apartment building is buzzing about the hot guy in the Bentley who's picking you up tomorrow night. Mrs. Gonzalez from 3B has already reserved a window seat in the lobby. Nora groaned. This is why I hate dating. Everything's a public spectacle. Honey, when you're dating one of the most eligible bachelors in the country, spectacle doesn't begin to cover it. Zoe's voice turned serious. Are you ready for this? Really ready? It was a fair question. Nora sank onto her bed, considering it honestly. I don't know. He's not who I thought he was. Better or worse? Different, Nora replied thoughtfully. More real. He has Star Wars action figures in original packaging. A nerd billionaire, Zoe said approvingly. The best kind. See you in 30. We have work to do." Saturday evening arrived with alarming speed. After Zoe's extensive beauty regimen, involving products Nora hadn't known existed, and a pep talk that was equal parts encouragement and warnings about tabloid photographers, Nora stood in front of her mirror, barely recognizing herself. The dress Claire had insisted on was a deep emerald silk that made Nora's eyes look more green than hazel, with a graceful neckline and a fit that Claire had declared perfect for both five-star restaurants and dramatic confessions of love on rooftops. Her dark hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, and Zoe's makeup artistry had emphasized her high cheekbones and full lips while still looking natural. "Remember," Zoe said, adjusting a final curl, "you're Nora Parker, art historian, extraordinaire and tarantula whisperer. He's lucky to be going out with you." Before Nora could respond, her phone chimed, with a text from Michael. "Just pulling up outside. Take your time." A flutter of genuine nerves danced in her stomach. This wasn't the casual pizza dinner with Emma or the impromptu science project. This was a real date, with all the expectations and possibilities that entailed. "Go get him, Tiger," Zoe said, giving her a gentle push toward the door. "And remember every detail. I'll be waiting up to live vicariously through you." The lobby was, as predicted, unusually full of coincidentally present neighbors when Nora stepped out of the elevator. Mrs. Gonzalez gave her an enthusiastic thumbs up from her strategically positioned chair by the window. Outside, instead of the expected Bentley or SUV, a classic 1960s convertible waited at the curb, its midnight blue paint gleaming under the streetlights. Michael stood beside it, looking somehow even more handsome than usual in a tailored suit, without a tie, his collar open at the throat. His expression when he saw her made every second of Zoe's beauty boot camp worth it. "You look..." He seemed momentarily at a loss for words, a rarity for someone who regularly gave speeches to thousands. Incredible doesn't seem adequate. "Thank you," Nora replied, suddenly shy. "The car is unexpected." A smile spread across his face as he opened the passenger door for her. "I thought about the usual chauffeur and Bentley, but that felt like work. This is my personal car. I rebuilt the engine myself in college." "You rebuild engines?" Nora asked, intrigued by this new facet of him as she slid into the buttery leather seat. "Mechanical engineering was my first love," he explained, closing her door and walking around to the driver's side. "Before software ate the world." As they pulled away from the curb, Nora could have sworn she heard Mrs. Gonzalez's approving whistle from the lobby. "So," Nora said, relaxing into the seat as the night air swept around them. "Where are we going? Your sister hinted at something dramatic." Michael shot her a sidelong glance. "Claire has a big mouth and an overactive imagination." There was no real annoyance in his tone, just affectionate exasperation. "But she's not entirely wrong. I did want tonight to be special." "The car's already special," Nora assured him. "I've never been in a vintage convertible before." "Just wait," he replied with a confidence that made her pulse quicken. "The night is young." They drove through the city and up into the hills, the lights below them spreading out like a carpet of stars. Michael was a careful driver, his hands sure on the wheel as he navigated the winding roads. He was also surprisingly easy to talk to outside the context of work and family obligations, asking thoughtful questions about her art studies and listening intently to her answers. "I still can't believe you recorded my interview just to hear me talk about Monet," she teased as they climbed higher into the hills. "It wasn't just Monet," he defended himself with a laugh. "You also had fascinating thoughts on Degas and the way he captured movement. Most people would find that incredibly boring." "I'm not most people," he replied simply. "No," Nora agreed softly. "You're definitely not." They turned into a private drive, and Nora gasped as they approached what appeared to be a glass structure perched on the hillside, glowing like a lantern against the night sky. "What is this place?" she asked, as Michael parked beside the modernist building. The Hill House, he replied, coming around to open her door. It's a private art gallery and event space. A friend of mine owns it. As they approached, a man in a suit opened the door for them with a respectful nod. Mr. Montgomery, everything is prepared as you requested. Thank you, James. Michael guided Nora inside with a hand at the small of her back, and she found herself in a breathtaking open space with soaring ceilings and glass walls that showcased the city panorama below. But it was what filled the space that made her stop in her tracks. The large gallery was illuminated with soft lighting that highlighted a collection of Impressionist paintings, Monets, Renoirs, Degas, arranged throughout the room. In the center, a single table was set for dinner, surrounded by flowers and candles. Michael, Nora breathed, unable to form a coherent thought as she recognized some of the pieces from major museums. How did you... They're on loan, he explained, watching her reaction with evident pleasure. For one night only, a very exclusive, very private exhibition. But these are... She moved toward a small Monet water lily study, her professional training warring with her disbelief. This should be in a climate-controlled environment, with proper security. It is, he assured her. The building has museum-quality environmental controls, and there are more security measures in place than you can see. Nothing was compromised to arrange this. Nora turned to him, overwhelmed. You did this for me? Michael stepped closer, his expression earnest. You gave up your career in art for your mother. I thought, just for one night, I could bring the art to you. Something caught in Nora's chest, a feeling too big to name. No one had ever done anything remotely like this for her. I don't know what to say, she admitted, blinking back unexpected tears. Say you'll have dinner with me, he suggested gently, and then tell me everything you know about every painting in this room. Nora laughed, the emotion breaking through. That could take all night. His eyes held hers, warm and certain. I have nowhere else to be. As a waiter appeared to guide them to their table, Nora realized that Claire had been right. Michael Montgomery didn't do things halfway. And perhaps more surprisingly, neither did she. Because despite all her practical concerns and logical objections, she was falling for him with a speed and certainty that defied rationality. And for once in her carefully planned life, she didn't want to fight it. He rented out an entire private art gallery? Zoe's voice rose to a pitch that made Nora wince and hold her phone further from her ear. With actual Monets? Real ones? From museums? Keep it down, Nora hissed, glancing around the coffee shop where she was supposed to be working on her mother's insurance paperwork. Yes, real ones. On loan. For one night. It had been 3 days since the most surreal date of Nora's life. A night spent discussing brushwork techniques and light composition over exquisite food, followed by Michael inviting her to examine each painting up close, his hand warm against her back as she explained the historical context of each piece. The evening had ended with a kiss beside the vintage convertible. One perfect, cinematic kiss that made Nora's toes curl just remembering it. He'd been a gentleman, walking her to her door afterward, but not presuming more. And then he just went home? Zoe demanded, clearly disappointed by the lack of scandal. After all that setup? Not everyone measures a successful date by whether clothes come off, Zoe, Nora replied, though she couldn't deny a small part of her had been tempted to invite him in. Fine. Be all mature and rational. Zoe sighed dramatically. So when are you seeing him again? That was the complicated part. He's in Tokyo until Thursday. Something about the software integration that was giving them trouble. The billionaire CEO has to work. How inconvenient, Zoe teased. But that doesn't answer my question. Before Nora could respond, her phone vibrated with an incoming text. Michael's name appeared on the screen. He just texted. she told Zoe. "I'll call you."
Back! Don't you dare read it to me!
Nora rolled her eyes but opened the message. "Tokyo is 14 hours ahead, but I still can't stop thinking about Saturday night, particularly the part where you corrected the professional curator about the provenance of the Renoir." His face was priceless. A smile spread across her face involuntarily. "He's thinking about Saturday." "Of course he is," Zoe replied smugly. "What else?" "The flight's delayed, so I finally have a moment to ask. Dinner at my place Thursday night? I'll cook." "He wants to make me dinner on Thursday," Nora relayed, ignoring the suggestive sound Zoe made. "At his place." "Home turf," Zoe noted. "Things are getting serious." Were they? Nora hadn't allowed herself to think too far ahead. Dating Michael, Montgomery came with complications she was only beginning to comprehend. The difference in their financial situations alone was staggering, not to mention the potential public scrutiny if things progressed. "I think I'm overthinking this," she admitted to Zoe. "You? Overthinking? I'm shocked," her friend replied dryly. "Text the man back and say yes to dinner, then get back to those insurance forms. I'll start assembling Thursday's outfit options." "I'm perfectly capable of dressing myself," Nora protested. "Honey, this is the man who rented Monet's for you. We're bringing our A-game." After hanging up with Zoe, Nora stared at her phone, composing and deleting several responses before settling on, "I'm still processing Saturday. In a good way. Thursday dinner sounds perfect. I didn't know billionaires could cook." His reply came instantly. "Only simple things. Don't set expectations too high. The Tokyo team sends their regards. Apparently I'm insufferably cheerful despite the integration crisis." Nora laughed softly, typing back, "Tell them I apologize for your good mood. Good luck with the crisis." "Worth it," he responded, adding a simple heart emoji that made Nora's pulse quicken ridiculously. She set her phone down, trying to refocus on the insurance paperwork, only to be interrupted by another text. This one wasn't from Michael, but from Claire. "Lunch tomorrow?" Emma got an A+ on her spider project and insists on celebrating with her Aunt Nora. Life was getting very complicated. Very quickly. "Be honest," Nora said to Claire the next day, as they watched Emma demolish an ice cream sundae the size of her head at the upscale dessert shop Claire had chosen for their celebration. "Is this weird? Me spending time with Emma? With you?" Claire considered the question, stirring her affogato thoughtfully. "Do you want the polite answer, or the honest one?" "Honest, please." "It's unusual," Claire admitted. "But Emma doesn't connect with many adults since the divorce. She's selective about who she trusts, and for some reason, she decided you were trustworthy from day one." "Because I know Pokemon names," Nora said with a small smile. "And you don't talk down to her," Claire added. "Do you have any idea how rare that is? Most of my friends either ignore her completely or treat her like she's a toddler." Emma looked up from her ice cream, chocolate smeared adorably across her chin. "Are you guys talking about me?" "Only about how brilliant your science project was," Nora assured her, passing her a napkin. "It was awesome," Emma agreed, wiping her face. "Tyler Matheson said his dad could put out fires but couldn't make a spider project as cool as mine." "Victory is sweet," Claire commented with a wink at Nora. As Emma returned to her dessert demolition, Claire lowered her voice. "Michael told me about your date. I've never seen him so buoyant." "It was incredible," Nora admitted. "A bit overwhelming, honestly." "That's Michael," Claire said with an affectionate eye roll. "When he cares about something, or someone, he goes all in. Always has." "That's what concerns me," Nora confessed, voicing the worry that had been nagging at her. "This is moving so fast, and there's such a gap between our worlds. I'm worried about what happens when the novelty wears off." Claire's expression softened. "You think you're a novelty to him?" "I'm different from his usual type, as you pointed." out. Because his usual type hasn't worked out, Claire replied firmly. Look, my brother is many things. Brilliant, occasionally arrogant, terrible at video games despite his tech genius. But he doesn't play with people's feelings. If he's pursuing this, it's because he sees something real. Aunt Nora, want to try my super chocolate fudge? Emma interrupted, holding out a spoonful of ice cream drowning in hot fudge sauce. I would be honored, Nora replied seriously, accepting the spoon. As the celebration continued, Nora found herself wondering how quickly Emma would be hurt if things between her and Michael didn't work out. The thought made her stomach clench with responsibility she hadn't anticipated when she'd first seen Michael Montgomery in nothing but a towel. Thursday evening arrived with a mix of anticipation and nerves that had Nora changing outfits 3 times before settling on a simple navy blue dress that Zoe declared perfect for a home-cooked meal from a man worth billions. When she arrived, at Michael's penthouse, the private elevator opening directly into his foyer, she was surprised to hear music playing. Not the classical she might have expected, but vintage jazz. The scent of garlic and herbs filled the air, making her mouth water. Michael, she called, setting down her purse on the console table. In the kitchen, he replied, his voice sending a flutter through her chest. She followed the sound to find him in a space she'd cleaned numerous times but never seen in use. The sleek, professional-grade kitchen was now alive with activity, pots simmering on the stove, a bottle of wine breathing on the counter, and Michael Montgomery, billionaire CEO, wearing jeans and a casual button-down with the sleeves rolled up, chopping vegetables with surprising skill. He looked up as she entered, his face breaking into a smile that made her heart skip. You're right on time. Something smells amazing, Nora said, moving closer to peek at the stove. Coq au vin, he replied, setting down his knife to greet her properly, his hands coming to rest lightly on her waist. One of the few dishes I can make without embarrassing myself. Impressive, she murmured, suddenly very aware of how close they were standing. I didn't know you could cook. My mother's French, he explained, brushing a quick kiss against her lips before returning to his vegetables. She insisted all her children know how to make at least 3 proper French dishes. Claire makes a mean bouillabaisse. I can barely make spaghetti without setting off the smoke alarm, Nora admitted, leaning against the counter to watch him work. Then we complement each other perfectly, Michael replied, glancing up with a warmth in his eyes that made her breath catch. Wine? The domesticity of the scene was disarming. Michael pouring her a glass of wine, asking about her day, moving confidently around the kitchen as he finished preparing their meal. It felt natural in a way Nora hadn't expected, as if they'd done this 100 times before. Tokyo went well eventually, he told her, as they carried their plates to the dining table. Not the formal one in the separate dining room, but a more intimate table in a windowed alcove off the kitchen. The integration issue turned out to be a simple timestamp error. 2 days of international panic over a misplaced semicolon. Nora laughed. The devil's in the details. Always, he agreed, raising his glass to hers. To details worth noticing. The toast felt weighted with meaning, making Nora blush slightly as she sipped her wine. The food was genuinely delicious, and the conversation flowed easily between them, covering everything from art to technology to travel. I can't believe you've never been to Paris, Michael said as they finished their meal. With your love of Impressionism? Student loans and medical bills don't leave much room for international travel, Nora replied with a small shrug. Something flickered in Michael's expression, a reminder of the vast differences in their circumstances. You should see the Musée d'Orsay in person, the way the light fills that space. It's something no photograph can capture. Someday, Nora said, meaning it. It's on my list. After dinner, they moved to the living room with fresh glasses of wine. The wall of windows showcased the city lights spread below them, but Nora's attention was drawn to something she hadn't noticed during her cleaning duties, a discreet display case built into the bookshelves. Are those She moved closer, eyes widening. Claire wasn't kidding. Original Star Wars figures. Mint in box. Michael winced slightly. She told you about those, huh? She might have mentioned your nerdy side, Nora confirmed with a grin, examining the meticulously preserved collectibles. These must be worth a fortune. They were my grandfather's, Michael explained, coming to stand beside her. He bought them when the original film was released. Gave them to me when I was 10, made me promise never to open them. You kept that promise, Nora observed. Some things are worth preserving, he said softly, his gaze shifting from the figures to her face. The air between them changed, charged with unspoken possibility. Michael set his wineglass down on a side table, taking hers and placing it beside his. I've been thinking about kissing you again since I got on the plane to Tokyo, he admitted, his voice lower. That's a long time to think about something, Nora replied, her own voice not quite steady. Worth the wait, he murmured, closing the distance between them. Unlike the sweet, relatively chaste kiss after their first date, this one held nothing back. Michael's hands framed her face with tender precision, his mouth moving against hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. Nora found herself responding with equal fervor, her fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt, drawing him closer. What began as a single kiss evolved into something more, a slow, thorough exploration that left them both breathless when they finally pulled apart. I should probably confess something, Michael said, his forehead resting against hers, his breathing uneven. Should I be worried? Nora asked, her hands still resting against his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath her palm. I haven't felt this way about anyone. Ever, he admitted, the vulnerability in his voice striking in a man normally so controlled. It's a little terrifying. Nora smiled, oddly reassured by his confession. I'm glad I'm not the only one who's terrified. Is that what you are? His fingers traced the line of her jaw, gentle and reverent. Among other things, she acknowledged, this is all moving very fast, and there are complications. Such as, he prompted, not pulling away. You're technically my boss, Nora pointed out, though the employment relationship felt increasingly irrelevant. There's the slight matter of our drastically different financial situations. And then there's Emma, who's already calling me Aunt Nora, and would be hurt if this doesn't... Michael silenced her with another kiss, brief but effective. Valid concerns, all of them. But... Nora sensed the unspoken continuation. But I think what's happening between us is worth navigating those complications, he said simply. If you do. The sincerity in his eyes made something tight in Nora's chest unfurl. This wasn't a casual fling or a passing interest for either of them. It was something real, something with potential and risk in equal measure. I do, she admitted, softly. Though I have no idea how this works in practical terms. A slow smile spread across his face. We figure it out together, starting with you no longer being my employee. I've already arranged for a new housekeeper through the agency. You fired me? Nora asked, surprised. I gave you a generous severance package and excellent references, he corrected with a hint of mischief. Though I did note that you have an unfortunate tendency to allow spiders free range of the premises. Nora laughed, the tension breaking. That seems fair. I also have a proposal, Michael continued, guiding her to the sofa where they sat close together, his hand finding hers. The Montgomery Foundation funds art restoration projects at several museums. They have an opening for a consultant with your exact qualifications. Nora stilled, processing his words. Are you offering me a job? I'm connecting you with an opportunity that suits your training and passion, he clarified carefully. 1. That pays considerably better than housekeeping, and has nothing to do with me professionally. The foundation's board makes hiring decisions independently. I don't need charity, Nora said stiffly, old pride flaring. It's not charity, Michael replied, his expression earnest. It's recognizing talent that's being wasted. The fact that I get to kiss the consultant without ethical concerns is just a bonus. Put that way, it was hard to maintain her indignation, especially when he was looking at her with such openness. I'll think about it, she conceded. That's all I ask. He raised their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her knuckles in a gesture that seemed both old-fashioned and intimate. Now would you like dessert? I can't take credit for it. Claire made her famous chocolate mousse. Your sister seems very invested in our dinner, Nora observed with a smile. The entire Montgomery family is invested in my personal happiness, Michael admitted ruefully. It's both touching and mildly intrusive. Speaking of family, Nora said, reminded of something that had been bothering her. How would we explain this to Emma? If things continue developing between us. Michael's expression softened at the mention of his niece. Emma already adores you, independent of any relationship with me. As for explaining, kids are adaptable. She already thinks you hang the moon because you know Pokemon names and aren't afraid of her spider. I just don't want to confuse her, Nora said softly. Your concern for her means more to me than I can express, Michael replied, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. We'll be thoughtful about it. Take it at a pace that works for everyone. The rest of the evening unfolded with a new ease between them, the major concerns acknowledged and addressed, if not fully resolved. They shared Claire's decadent chocolate mousse, talked about books and films, and eventually found themselves back where they'd started, kissing on the sofa with increasing intensity, the line between taking things slow and giving in to obvious, mutual desire growing blurrier by the minute. When Nora reluctantly checked her watch and realized how late it had gotten, Michael called his driver to take her home, walking her to the elevator with evident reluctance. I'd offer to drive you myself in the convertible, but I've had too much wine, he said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture that was becoming familiar and cherished. Responsible billionaire, she teased, leaning into his touch. I have a reputation to maintain, he replied with a smile that faded into something more serious. When can I see you again? The eagerness in his voice matched the flutter in her chest. I'm having lunch with my mother on Saturday. She's been asking about this mysterious new job that's making me so happy. Would you want to meet her? The invitation had slipped out impulsively, but Nora didn't regret it. If they were really doing this, navigating the complications for something meaningful, then her mother was an important part of that equation. Instead of hesitation, Michael's face lit up with genuine pleasure. I'd love to meet your mother. Saturday lunch sounds perfect. As the elevator doors opened, he pulled her close for one more lingering kiss. Good night, Nora Parker, former employee, future art consultant, current... He paused, searching for the right word. Girlfriend seems inadequate, Nora offered with a smile. Very inadequate, he agreed. We'll work on the terminology. In the elevator, descending from the rarefied world of Michael's penthouse toward the reality of her modest life, Nora found herself not overthinking for once, but simply feeling the lingering warmth of his touch, the taste of chocolate and wine, and the unfamiliar but welcome sensation of jumping into something unknown with her whole heart. Reality would bring challenges, she knew, practical, logistical, and emotional hurdles they'd need to navigate. But for tonight, at least, those concerns felt manageable when balanced against the certainty growing between them. Mom, this is Michael. Michael, my mother, Eleanor Parker. Nora tried to keep her voice steady as she made the introduction in the sunlit conservatory of the rehabilitation center where her mother had been staying. The elegant space, with its indoor garden and comfortable seating areas, was designed to feel more like a high-end hotel than a medical facility. though Nora knew the astronomical monthly cost well. Her mother, a slender woman in her early 60s with Nora's same hazel eyes and a wheelchair she navigated with practiced ease, extended her hand to Michael with a warm smile. "So you're the mysterious billionaire who's turned my daughter's life upside down." "Mom," Nora hissed, mortified. But Michael just laughed, taking Eleanor's hand with genuine respect. "Guilty as charged, Mrs. Parker, though I'd argue she's done more upending to my life than the reverse." "Eleanor, please," Nora's mother insisted. "And I believe that entirely. Nora has always had a talent for creating beautiful chaos." As they settled at a table by the windows overlooking the gardens, Nora marveled at Michael's ease. He'd arrived without the trappings of wealth that usually accompanied him. No driver, no assistant, just himself in casual clothes carrying a bouquet of wildflowers that her mother had immediately declared far more interesting than roses. "Nora tells me you're an avid reader," Michael said to Eleanor as their lunch was served. "Any recommendations? I'm always looking for something beyond the business bestsellers people keep sending me." Eleanor's face lit up, and Nora relaxed as her mother launched into an enthusiastic discussion of obscure literary fiction that, surprisingly, Michael seemed familiar with. The two were soon deep in a friendly debate about an author Nora had never heard of, leaving her to observe their interaction with a mixture of amusement and relief. "You've been holding out on me," Eleanor said to her daughter during a lull in the conversation. "You didn't mention he was well-read." "There are many things I'm still discovering about Michael," Nora replied with a small smile in his direction. "The best kind of relationship," Eleanor approved, her eyes sharp with maternal assessment. "Discovery keeps things interesting." As lunch progressed, Nora watched Michael thoughtfully fielding her mother's increasingly direct questions about his intentions, his family background, and even his views on healthcare policy. A topic Eleanor felt strongly about given her circumstances. Not once did he seem uncomfortable or condescending, treating her mother with the same attentive respect he showed to business associates and world leaders in the interviews Nora had guiltily watched online. "Tell me," Eleanor said, fixing Michael with a direct gaze as dessert was served. "What exactly do you see in my daughter, besides the obvious?" she added with a maternal pride that made Nora blush. "Mom, that's not—" "It's a fair question," Michael interrupted gently, setting down his fork and giving the question his full consideration. "The first thing I noticed was her mind, the way she thinks about art, about history, about connections between things. She sees patterns and meanings others miss." He glanced at Nora, something softening in his expression. "Then there's her. Humor. She's the only person who's ever made me laugh while explaining why my ridiculously expensive vase would have been better suited as a planter." Eleanor chuckled at this, nodding as if confirming something she already knew. "But what I admire most," Michael continued, his voice growing more serious, "is her integrity. Nora knows who she is and what matters to her. That's rare in my world." A silence fell over the table, broken only when Eleanor declared, "Well, he'll do nicely," making both Nora and Michael laugh, the emotional weight of the moment dissolving into affectionate humor. Later, as Michael excused himself to take a brief call, Eleanor turned to her daughter with knowing eyes. "He's in love with you." "Mom," Nora protested, though a warm flutter spread through her chest at the words. "It's only been a few weeks." "Time is irrelevant when it's right," Eleanor replied with the certainty of someone who had loved deeply herself. "Your father proposed to me after 10 days. Everyone thought we were crazy. And yet you stayed married for 30 years. Nora acknowledged softly. "Until the day he died," her mother confirmed, reaching for Nora's hand. "I like your Michael. He sees you clearly." "He's not my Michael," Nora automatically objected. "He is," Eleanor contradicted with maternal confidence. "And you're his Nora. The sooner you both accept that, the sooner you can get on with the business of building a life together." Before Nora could form a response to this pronouncement, Michael returned, his expression apologetic. I'm sorry about that. Unavoidable board issue. No apology necessary, Eleanor assured him. I was just telling Nora that I approve of you, despite your billionaire status. Mom, high praise indeed, Michael replied with a grin. I'm honored to have passed the Eleanor Parker inspection. Don't get cocky, Eleanor warned, though her eyes twinkled with humor. The inspection is ongoing, lifetime evaluations updated regularly. I wouldn't have it any other way, he said sincerely. That wasn't as mortifying as I feared, Nora admitted as they walked through the rehabilitation center's gardens. Afterward, Michael's hand warm in hers. Though I'm pretty sure my mother just gave you permission to propose. Michael laughed, the sound carrying in the quiet garden. I liked her immensely. Now I see where you get your directness. Among other traits, Nora agreed. Thank you for today. It meant a lot to her. To me, too. He squeezed her hand gently. I should be thanking you for the introduction. Family is important. Speaking of family, Nora said carefully, Emma called me this morning. She wants to know if we can take her to the Natural History Museum tomorrow. Apparently there's a new spider exhibit. We? Michael questioned, a smile playing at his lips. Her words, not mine, Nora clarified. She seems to have decided we're a package deal. Smart kid, he replied, pulling her closer as they walked. And yes, we can absolutely take her to see more spiders, because apparently one tarantula in our lives isn't enough. The casual way he said our lives sent a ripple of happiness through Nora. 6 weeks ago, she'd been cleaning his penthouse. Now they were discussing weekend plans with his niece as if it were the most natural thing in the world. By the way, Michael said, his tone shifting to something more serious. Did you think more about the Montgomery Foundation position? Nora nodded, having spent considerable time weighing the opportunity. I had a virtual interview with the board yesterday. They seemed impressed by my restoration experience. You didn't tell me, Michael said, surprised. I wanted it to be based on my qualifications, not your influence, she explained. They offered me the position this morning. Michael stopped, walking, turning to face her with evident delight. Nora, that's fantastic. Although I'm not surprised. They'd be idiots not to hire you. I start next month, she continued, unable to suppress her own excitement. It's everything I trained for, Michael. Working with museums to preserve important works, developing restoration programs. It's a dream job. You deserve it, he said simply, his pride in her evident. Though I have to confess, I'll miss finding your cleaning cart in unexpected corners of my penthouse. I'm sure you'll manage with the new housekeeper, Nora teased, though I can't guarantee she'll be as skilled at spider wrangling. An irreplaceable loss, he agreed solemnly, then hesitated before adding, I've been meaning to ask you something. That sounds ominous, Nora replied, only half joking. Not ominous, just significant. Michael guided her to a bench beneath a blooming cherry tree, its pale pink petals occasionally drifting down around them. Nora's heart began to race. Michael, if this is heading where I think it is, it's way too... Move in with me, he interrupted, the words coming out in a rush. Not a proposal, not yet anyway, just share my space, share my life. Nora blinked, surprised by the request even as something inside her had been expecting it. That's a big step. It is, he acknowledged, but I've been thinking about it ever since Tokyo. Coming home to an empty penthouse after being with you, it felt wrong. We've only been dating for a few weeks, Nora pointed out, though the objection felt hollow even to her own ears. I know, Michael said, taking both her hands in his. And if you need more time, I understand completely. But, Nora, his eyes held hers, filled with a certainty that took her breath away. I know what this is. What we are. Don't you? The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Nora thought about the whirlwind of the past weeks, from chasing a tarantula across his marble floors to discussing art history over intimate dinners, from seeing his genuine love for his family to witnessing his respect for her mother. Most importantly, she thought about how she felt when she was with him, seen, valued, challenged, desired, not for what she could do for him or what she represented, but for who she truly was. Yes, she admitted softly. I know what this is. Relief and joy washed over his features. So I think, Nora said slowly, a smile building, that my apartment lease conveniently ends next month. And my mother seems to approve of you, despite your billionaire status. Is that a yes? Michael pressed, hope evident in his voice. Nora leaned forward, pressing her lips to his in a gentle kiss. It's a yes, with conditions. I pay my own way whenever possible. I keep my own savings account. And you have to promise not to fill the place with expensive art just because you... No, I'll appreciate it. Counteroffer, Michael replied, his arms encircling her waist. You contribute what makes you comfortable. You maintain complete financial independence, and I only buy art we choose together. Deal, Nora agreed, sealing the agreement with another kiss. As they walked back toward the parking lot, Michael's phone chimed with an incoming message. He checked it, a smile spreading across his face. Emma's already planning our museum trip, he reported. Apparently, we need to be there when the spider feeding demonstration happens at 2. Naturally, Nora laughed, leaning into his side. Can't miss the feeding frenzy. She also wants to know if you'll be at Sunday family dinner this week. Michael's voice carried a hint of uncertainty. Claire hosts it every week at her place. It's usually just the 3 of us, but I'd love to come, Nora said sincerely. Though I should warn you, this means you'll have to attend Parker family gatherings too. My Aunt Mildred will absolutely ask you inappropriate questions about your net worth. I can handle Aunt Mildred, Michael assured her confidently, opening the passenger door of his convertible for her. I survived your mother's literary interrogation, didn't I? As they drove through the city, the top down and the afternoon sun warm on their faces, Nora found herself filled with a contentment she hadn't expected when she'd first taken the housekeeping job out of financial desperation. Life had a funny way of working out, not always as planned, but sometimes better than imagined. What are you thinking about? Michael asked, glancing over at her as they stopped at a traffic light. Just how unexpected all this is, she replied honestly. If Mr. Fuzzy hadn't escaped that day, I'd have found another reason to talk to you, Michael admitted. I'd been looking for one since your interview. Really? Nora raised an eyebrow. Skeptically. Really, he confirmed, though I'm grateful to the spider for expediting things, particularly the towel situation. Nora laughed, the memory of their first real encounter still vivid. The towel was a bold choice. I'd just gotten out of the shower, he protested, though his grin suggested he wasn't entirely displeased with how events had unfolded. Besides, you weren't supposed to be in that part of the penthouse. I was chasing a rogue arachnid, Nora reminded him. Professional hazard. Best job performance ever, Michael declared, capturing her hand and bringing it to his lips as the light turned green. 3 months later. I still can't believe you threw away that perfectly good vase, Nora commented, carefully arranging fresh flowers in a simple ceramic vessel on the penthouse's coffee table. It wasn't perfectly good, Michael countered, from where he was reviewing documents at the dining table. It was hideous, and you know it. It had historical significance, she argued, though her smile belied any real criticism. It had dust-gathering significance, he corrected, setting aside his work to watch her. Besides, you were the one who Said our home should reflect both of us. That vase was definitely pre-Nora decor. Our home. The phrase still gave her a little thrill, even after 2 months of living together. The penthouse had gradually transformed with her presence, not through grand redecoration, but in small, meaningful ways. Her art history books mingled with his technical manuals on the shelves. A collection of vintage film posters she'd lovingly restored now hung in the hallway, her mother's hand-knitted throw draped across the back of the sofa. And in the corner of Michael's home office, a small terrarium housed a juvenile tarantula, Emma's gift to them as a housewarming present that had made Claire nearly faint, and Michael question his life choices, even as he carefully constructed the perfect habitat for their 8-legged roommate. Mr. Fuzzy Jr. needs a cricket, Nora noted, glancing at the terrarium as she passed the office doorway. I still can't believe I let you name our spider Mr. Fuzzy Jr., Michael groaned, coming up behind her to wrap his arms around her waist. It undermines my authority in board meetings just knowing he exists. Emma would accept nothing less, Nora reminded him, leaning back against his chest. And you can't say no to Emma. A family weakness, he acknowledged, pressing a kiss to her temple. Speaking of family, have you thought more about Christmas? Nora nodded, turning in his arms to face him. Mom's on board. She says a week in Vermont sounds perfect, as long as the cabin is wheelchair accessible. Already confirmed, Michael assured her. The renovations will be done by next month. The Christmas plan had been Michael's idea, renting a cabin in Vermont, where both families could celebrate together. Eleanor, Claire, Emma, the 3 of them, even Zoe for part of the time. A blending of their worlds that felt both daring and right. Thank you, Nora said softly, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw. For making room for all of us in your life. Our life, he corrected gently. And you've got it backward. You're the one who made room for me. Spider obsessions, business crises, Star Wars collectibles, and all. Nora smiled, thinking back to that fortune teller's question at Zoe's birthday party, months ago now. If your life was a movie, what genre would it be? She'd said tragedy then, half joking through the stress of medical bills and career setbacks. Now, as Michael pulled her close for a kiss that still made her heart race, she knew the real answer, the best kind of romantic comedy, one where the meet-cute involved a tarantula, the grand gesture featured impressionist masterpieces, and the happily ever after felt not like a fairy tale ending, but the promising beginning of a story still being written. What are you smiling about? Michael asked, his forehead resting against hers. Just thinking about how sometimes the unexpected turns out to be exactly what you need, Nora replied, standing on tiptoe to kiss him again, certain that whatever genres life had in store for them next, they'd face them together. Billionaire and art historian, unlikely pair, perfect match. In the office, Mr. Fuzzy Jr. scuttled across his terrarium, blissfully unaware of his role in bringing them together, while somewhere across the city, Emma Montgomery was undoubtedly planning their next spider-related adventure, the unconventional family they'd become, bound together by love, laughter, and the occasional escaped arachnid.